How does God tell me my mission that I focus on?
How does God ever tell us anything? So when you're in communication with him, right? So let's think about it, right? So prayer means to ask, meditation means to listen, contemplation means to become. I did a daily Lama last week called Walk a Mile in My Moccasins, right? You won't know me, okay? And according to the Lama theory and contemplation as a human relationship, one of the greatest things that can happen is we all become one another. So if you've been doing some prayer for a while where you're asking, there's a good chance by now he's starting to nudge you in many ways. One of the ways God speaks to us is through synchronicity. And as you raise your vibration to more 5D by doing these spiritual disciplines we're talking about, that synchronicity happens. You know, the phone rings and gosh, Aunt Betty, I was just thinking about you. And you go, you're pulling into the parking lot. You knew the parking space was going to be there before you got there. That's synchronicity. You can call it coincidence. You can call it whatever. As you begin to vibrate higher, that becomes a regular modus operandi. That's also God speaking to you. Are you paying attention, right? I have this friend of mine that she's contemplating buying this property. And so we're talking about this property. And I said, well, what do you want on this property? Well, come to find out a certain percentage of the property's developed, but about 80% of the property is not developed. And I said, if you were to have the property, what would you put on the property? And she says, well, I would want this, this, and this, and this. So she gets a call today. She gets an email to back up the call. This says, it's so funny that you said you wanted this, this, and this, because we had this guy come out who's a master of horticulture, and he did all these soil samples, and he ran all this diagnosis on your property. And guess what? The region where this property is, everything you asked for can be grown on that property. Well, can you imagine what she's thinking right now? If that's not synchronicity, I don't know what is, but she was asking already in her own way. Now, in all fairness, she's been a student of Tai Chi Gong for a solid 2 years, and she practices pretty regular, and she's a smart lady, a great entrepreneur, great mentor. So she does what she says. She wanted to bounce it off the Lama. And I said, well, sounds like to me, so-and-so, that God wants you to have that, right? So see, what happens is God's got things in store for you you just can't even imagine. All he's asking you to do is do what he's been doing for you all these years, loving you and spending time with you. He wants to know, are you willing to love him back? Now, you might jump on it and say, of course, Lama Rasaji, I love, really? Then how often do you spend time with him? Because when it really comes down to it, see, I have 3 sons and the most wonderful wife in the world. You know how they know when I truly care about them? Not what I buy them, not what I bring them in gifts, not with money. They know it when I put all my electronics aside and I go out in nature or I take them to the restaurant and they have my unadulterated attention. See, you don't deserve to have God's gifts and God's mission until you're willing to 20 to 40 minutes a day spend unadulterated, non-interference time with the Father.